I'm Kim Todd, and we've got another great show for you as we answer all of those gardening questions. Give us a call at 1-800-676-5446. Our phone volunteers will be happy to help you. If you've got some pictures you'd like to send us for a future show, send those emails to byf@unl.edu. Please remember to tell us where you live. Give us as much information as you can so we can give you a complete answer. You know, Backyard Farmer is also available online on our YouTube channel, as well as on our Facebook fan page, so do be sure to check those out this week. Let's get going with questions. Kyle, the question of the week to every single extension office, at least in Lincoln, is this. You have 3 pictures, caterpillars on ash tree leaves. Found these caterpillars on a twig that had fallen to the ground from a 40-year-old ash tree. Notice several more areas with holes. The tree is being professionally treated for emerald ash borer, but what do we have? And you brought a sample of this too.
I have some with me here. So these are brown-headed ash sawflies. And so these are actually the larvae of a wasp rather than a caterpillar. So they're kind of a sporadic pest normally. They're not something that we see, you know, every year. At least not in sort of damaging levels. They're here every year, but usually they're pretty well controlled by the environment. And really the last several years, at least here in Lincoln, we've been seeing pretty big numbers of them. So these guys, they feed on ash and can really defoliate quite a bit. They come out you know, early May, and they'll feed through June. So most of the time, they're not really a concern. So the tree is very good at tolerating defoliation. It takes a lot of defoliation to really be too detrimental to the tree, at least in isolation. But unfortunately, a lot of our ash don't exist in that vacuum, and there's a lot of other issues going on with them. So it's one of those things that if it's a real high value ash that you're really concerned about. It sounds like maybe that could be the case in this situation where they're treating for emerald ash borer as well. If they have issues with that, then it could be something you might want to contact your arborist and see what sort of recommendations they might have if they think it's worth treating. Unfortunately, it's not something that's really easy to treat on a mature tree. Because you need thorough coverage, but otherwise, if it's not a tree that's real high value, a lot of times just good heavy rain will dislodge a lot of them and they can't get back up. And so you can kind of try to mimic that with a forceful stream of water. Yeah, that's about it.
All right, no emerald ash borer.
No.
All right, you have one picture on the next one, Kyle. This is an Omaha viewer. This is the only picture she sent. She wonders if these are concerning. She did see patches of eggs on the deck railing. Okay.
No, not really concerning. So this is a nymph of a box elder bug. So they're coming out about now. And the adults overwinter. They're really, really notorious for coming into our homes in the fall, for invading homes and staying there. And then they'll become active early spring and lay eggs. And that's what we have right here. So they're almost never really actually a problem for the trees, the box elder, or for other maples or occasionally ash that they would feed on. So not really a concern there. The only problem would be if you have large numbers of them building up, then that can be a nuisance invading your home in the fall. So in that case, maybe something you would consider treating a little bit later, but otherwise generally just you can leave them alone.
All right, and one pick on this one too. This is a Papillion viewer, wants to know what kind of a bug is this and what will it do or eat?
Well, it's a rainbow scarab and it will eat dung. So this is one of our really most beautiful and charismatic beetles in the state. They're really, really shiny, kind of metallic, iridescent red and green there. And they're a pretty large dung beetle actually, and they'll tunnel down right beneath the dung, and the male and female will pair and they'll provision their nest and feed on the dung.
All righty, on that note, Rock, you have 4 pictures on this one. This is a viewer who needs identification, plants 4 to 6 inches in height. He thought this was maybe Lespedeza. What do we think this is?
So it's not Lespedeza. Lespedeza is a legume. It's got that very characteristic trifoliate leaf. And this is clearly a goosefoot or a lamb's quarter. And there's a lot of generic names for it. There's a lot of genus. I'm going to say that this is one that they clearly got down and lower, but it doesn't, some of them don't get over 4 inches, you know, they can be really short, and they're prolific seeders. And I think if they're looking for a control, was it in turf, did they say? If
right.
in turf, you know, it's relatively easy to control, usually with mowing, but if they're mowing pretty high and it's not that, it's one of the shorter stature ones, that's going to be a problem. But most any of the broadleaf herbicides will pretty much smoke it.
All right, you have 2 pictures on the next one. This is a Columbus viewer. She wonders, is this poison ivy, and how do you control it?
Yes, and control depends on where it is, but usually there's a fair amount of products out there that contain triclopyr. It used to use 2,4-D and glyphosate combinations, but that tends to be a little hot, plus the drift onto desirable ornamentals is problematic. So find a product with triclopyr, not recommending a brand, but the Scott's product that's called Poison Ivy Killer has a nice little cocktail in it. But you got to be careful when you're spraying in and around the garden.
All right, and you have one more picture, and this viewer actually is from Midtown Omaha, has this vine. He thought maybe this is leaves of 3. This is leaflets of 3.
Yeah, it should really be leaflets of 3. These are leaflets and not, true leaves. And that's the same is true of poison ivy. This is actually Boston ivy, which in some locations is a desirable, those majestic old homes and stuff that have a lot of Boston ivy on them. The major difference in how they look is that Boston ivy has a stem on every leaf on the trifoliate, so 3 leaves, 3 stems, but poison ivy only has the one in the center leaf. So when you look at these two, they're attached right at the base of the leaf, but the top one has a stem on it.
All right, excellent. Okay, Dennis.
Yes.
You have 3 pictures on this first one. She comes, this question from Beamer. So 20 holes in a 6x6 area. She noticed a few holes a few years ago between street curb and sidewalk. What is this?
These are voles with a V. And they're very cyclic, which means they have like 25 per acre, then they'll go up to 250 per acre. So she's on the upswing of their population, and the multi-catch traps are the best way to go. They sell by very different names, catch-all, tin cat, but you want box traps that you wind up. Look for those either at your store or online to catch them. And you don't need to bait it. You just put those out and you'll catch them overnight.
Oh my goodness, 250 per acre.
Yep.
Okay, you have 1 picture on the next one. This is also what made these holes. This is Omaha, east side of the property where they had moles last year, and they just showed up this week.
Okay, these aren't moles, these are voles again. Same thing, same box trap, no bait, put it out overnight, and usually if you put it in the right place and it's a good night, you'll get 4 or 5 in the trap in one night, and get 2 or 3 traps and move them around.
All right, and 1 picture on this next one. What made this hole in the yard? She's just shown us this with a 3-inch hole.
Yeah, so this looks like it could be a squirrel digging or something like that. It doesn't look like a vole because of the way it's in one direction, the dirt. So maybe a squirrel burying something or digging up a nut, or it could even be maybe a bird. It looks more like a squirrel digging something, so.
All right. Elizabeth, your first 3 pictures come to us from Grand Island. He has 2 maples in the front of his house. They had a long winter. They don't look healthy. He took the pictures on May 5th. What do we think is going on with these?
Were they maples or were they oaks?
He thinks they're maples. They are actually oaks.
They are actually oaks, and so making sure that we have identification is going to be key. Right now, what the tree is doing is it is flowering. So those little long stringy catkins are actually the flowers on it. Unfortunately, I was unable to tell if it was a red oak or a pin oak, but for us in central Nebraska, they are susceptible to iron chlorosis. So be on the lookout if they turn that light lemony, yellowy, green coloration, because that can cause a wide variety of issues like stunted growth, twig dieback, things like that. All we can really do is oaks are one of the later ones to emerge with their leaves. So be on on the lookout, wait for those leaves to emerge. If they don't emerge, then at that point in time, more than likely, that branch is dead. It can be removed. But like I said, be on the lookout for chlorosis because it can cause twig dieback.
And anything to do about chlorosis?
With the chlorosis, in order to treat, there's several different options depending on the diameter of the tree. The options are a short-term fix. There's not going to be anything long-term that you can do for iron chlorosis. You can do an injection and have a certified applicator come out and do that. Homeowners can do capsules or the liquids in there. You can do the Whitcomb method where you put PVC pipe on a square foot grid in your yard and then backfill it with iron and micronutrients and macronutrients. Foliar applications are short at best. The thing is the pH of our soil is so high that it ties the iron up so it's not available to the tree. So technically we could try to change the pH of our soil, but you know, rock is, yep, no, I know what rock's answer is, so that's why I had to throw that one in there. So I mean, there's no easy fix when it comes to that iron chlorosis, unfortunately, other than plant selection for those that are not susceptible.
All right, 2 pictures on the next one. This is also Grand Island. This is a Majestic Skies northern pin oak. They know it's dead, but they wonder why.
So I talked to the person that submitted this question, and the tree looked perfectly fine last year, and then all of a sudden this spring they noticed the bark blasting. So the bark blasting and the bark falling off wasn't the cause of the death. However, because it's a northern pin oak, it really does better in northern climates. And I think the reason that it started to decline and died is because of our lovely Nebraska temperatures. It's not the heat that killed it. It's not the cold that killed it. It's the roller coaster temperatures between the heat and the cold that killed it. So that's probably what we're looking at. I talked to Kim off air and we talked about how we really didn't have good ones that survived in Lincoln. So in my mind, if we can't get them to survive in Lincoln, we really don't have much hope in Grand Island. But it was a fun one to try. It lasted 5 years, but maybe we'll try something else in its place.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Elizabeth. Well, you know, for a few years, we've been hearing about invasive jumping worms that can cause problems in our soils. But what exactly is the difference between those and those regular night crawlers? For our first segment tonight, Jody helps us figure out which worms are beneficial, which ones are causing problems.
Let's get to know the worms around us, how to identify them, and what their ecology is. In our garden landscape, we have several worms. We know about night crawlers, even though we may not see them. But if you want to know what they look like, you can go to any fishing store and see those chunky worms that people really like to use to catch fish. They make very deep vertical burrows in the soil, and sometimes at night we can see them when they come up to the surface to eat. Most other times we just see their middens or castings which they leave at the surface. They are very large, pretty juicy, and mature worms will have a reproductive organ called the clitellum, and you can see that band that goes around their body. Sometimes you may see smaller red earthworms, especially when you're in the garden digging. They're usually in the top 3 to 4 inches, they're skinnier, and they're red. Mature worms will also have a clitellum that goes partially around its body, and it's segmented. You may see that, like that little spot there. We also have something called red wigglers. These are not often found in the garden, but they are specialists when it comes to decomposing and compost. So people may keep them inside or in containers as vermicomposting worms to help them break down that organic matter, table scraps, and things like that. Another worm that we are most concerned about, though, is the invasive jumping worms. These are found in gardens, especially when new mulch is brought in or when new plants are brought in. These are different from our regular worms that we see in our garden, like those night crawlers or the red earthworms, because their behavior is such that they jump. They don't have any legs, but they can thrash and propel their bodies out of the soil, they also get quite large at the end of the year. They're annual colonies, so they start off as little tiny eggs or cocoons. And so this time of year in the spring, they are not very big. If you find a large earthworm, it is not going to be an invasive jumping worm. They can be identified from our red worms or our night crawlers because they are darker in color. They have a rubbery feel and kind of a metallic sheen. And if you see a mature jumping worm, its clitellum goes all the way completely around its body and it's flush. It's not like a saddle where it's a raised segmented bump. It is a cloudy, gray, flattened band, and it's closer to the front of its body than the middle, like some of our European earthworms. Jumping worms live at the soil surface underneath piles of leaf litter and mulch. They can break down that matter so quickly. The reason we don't want invasive jumping worms in our landscape beds is because they really break down those nutrients and leave our soil looking and feeling like spent coffee grounds, which is not a good environment for plants to grow in. If you see some worms and you're wondering which is which, touch it and see if it jumps or if it wiggles around like a snake. If it is those jumping worms, you want to remove them, put them in a bag, and discard them in the trash. I hope this helps you identify your worms and make sure you can identify which ones are the good worms that we want there and which ones are the ones we don't want there.
Thanks, Jody. We do hope those tips help you determine which ones are in your yard. All right, Kyle, you have 2 pictures on the next one. This comes to us from Lincoln. Service berries, what is going on with this situation? He brushed against a branch. It almost exploded with a cloud of snowflake-like spores.
Yeah, they're woolly aphids. And there's actually a number of species that will feed on service berries. So there's woolly apple aphids, woolly elm aphids, several others. Generally speaking, if they're on the foliage, it's probably not too concerning. You know, you can just spray them with a forceful stream of water to dislodge them. Insecticidal soaps are probably not quite as good for woolly aphids, but generally very good for aphids overall. So those would be really good options. But they can be a problem. The woolly elm aphids in particular will feed on the roots and crown. And so if you're seeing any there, then it can actually be more detrimental to the plant. And so that would be something to check for and see if there's anything, you know, down around the base of the trunk, if there's cracks in the soil, if you can kind of see that waxy material anywhere down there. And if so, then you might want to consider something a little bit you know, more toxic. So you could use like a granular, basically do a granular drench, something that you apply down around the base, if so, and then soak that in, water it in, and try to get that insecticide down to the roots where those aphids are feeding.
All right, one picture on this next one. This is aphids on a shell leaf penstemon. So same deal?
Yep, pretty much the same idea. So here, you know, a forceful stream of water to dislodge these would be fine. There's a lot here. Insecticidal soap, again, really good. And also when you have them, so many like this, sometimes I just like to, you know, just mechanically, you know, just kind of remove them with my fingers. And they produce an alarm pheromone. So as soon as you do that, you crush one, then they're just going to all start like dropping off the plant. It's kind of fun to watch, but also kind of a good way to get a lot of those off the plant, and many of them won't make it back up.
All right, and you have 2 pictures on the next one, I think. The question, this is Lincoln, did this caterpillar come out of the bird feeder that has black sunflower seed and safflower seed, or is it trying to go in? And what is the round green blob on its abdomen?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the green blob might be like from an injury or something, and just a little bit of its essentially blood, hemolymph, that is kind of coming out. I don't think it's trying to get in or out of the feeder. I'm guessing maybe this is attached to a tree. because it looks like a speckled green fruit worm. At least it's part of the green fruit worm complex. And so these are just, they feed on a number of deciduous trees, so that's probably what it is. Generally, they're not too important as pests, but speckled green fruit worms, if it is a fruiting tree, they can tunnel into developing fruit. So that would just be something to think about if it is on, around fruit trees, something to watch for. And little ones can be treated with BT effectively.
All right, thanks. One picture on the first one here for you, Rock. This comes to us from Newman Grove. He said the lawn is browning from street runoff water from the recent rains. No evidence of a chemical spill. The neighbors have the same issue along their edges of lawns also. The city does not treat with ice melt. Any idea?
Well, so normally when we see runoff, it's not this nice a line, right? I mean, you usually see trickles of whatever it is, if indeed it's runoff, especially with salt. It never makes that good a line. That actually looks like it's been sprayed, and I'm not convinced that that they didn't spray the road or something with it. Not the homeowner necessarily, but that's too fine a line for me to think that was runoff coming off.
Right.
But without any prior knowledge, I can't say that's definitively what it is, but I don't think that's runoff from anything from the road.
All right. You have two pictures on the next one. This comes to us from Omaha. This is Star of Bethlehem, and he is wanting us to comment on how to get rid of it because it is invasive in some states, and he has a lot of it.
Yeah, and I mean, you can bid at mail order. In some states, it's not invasive. You can actually buy it in garden stores and that sort of thing. And people like the showiness of those little star flowers, or whatever you're going to call them. Unfortunately, it's one of the bullies, and it can really take over. And it's got little bulblets on it, and just a little piece of the bulblet can be problematic and start growing on it. There are herbicides that work really well on it. Anything that contains carfentrazone works really well on it. It's the same kind of product that you would use on wild garlic or wild onion. So you've got those as well, because those little small bulb things like that. And it's in products like Q4 or Speed Zone, which you can buy at a lot of the garden stores and a lot of the mass merchandise as well as online. The only thing is Q4 has 4 products in it, and you only need the carfentrazone, and Speed Zone has 3. So let's not introduce other things into the environment that we don't need. You're targeting the Star of Bethlehem, target it with carfentrazone.
All right, excellent. And 2 picks on the next one. This is a viewer who wants to know what this is, and we know what this is.
Yeah, it's a campanula or a bellflower. Some people grow them in their garden. They have pretty flowers on them when they flower, and I think you said yours is flowering already.
Or
and
close.
we've got one here. This is from your yard, isn't it? So this is what a campanula looks like. If we can get a close-up of that. And I do see some buds on her. I didn't originally, but this is going to get ready to flower. It's kind of a showy little small perennial, but it can be a bit of a bully at times and be and take over a garden space fairly quickly. So I would try to contain it in some way. But you can see it's got a pretty full leaf on it, and it's not a bad-looking plant, but that's a desirable one as long as you keep it in check.
Exactly. Thank you, Rock. All right, Dennis, 2 pictures on this one. He comes to us from La Vista. Last year, an animal took up residence in one of his raised garden beds. No damage to the crops. The burrow is 4 to 5 inches across and 10 inches deep, and the soil is pretty sandy and gritty, and it won't fill the hole back in.
It's 13-line ground squirrel, which is very indicative of a clean hole that goes straight down almost a foot. And again, they can be noted to go along and pick up seeds right after you plant them, or just as those seeds are starting to propagate and to germinate. So if you want, there's usually 1 per 2 holes, and they're kind of spread out with 13-line ground squirrels. They make special little traps, one-way door traps that they can go into, and you can make your own. Just go to wildlife.unl.edu, go to the 13-line ground squirrel, and there's a guide that shows you how to make the little trap out of quarter-inch hardware cloth.
All right, excellent. 1 picture on the next one.
Yeah.
Question is this a woodchuck?
Yes, it is. It's a ground Argo woodchuck, and he looks very noble sitting there. They're diurnal. They come out during the day. They're a ground squirrel, just like the 13-line ground squirrel, and he looks very fancy there. I like him.
And he was on the porch here
Yeah.
in Lincoln across from Woods Park.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, one picture on the next one. This one comes to us at Johnson Lake. Please identify what critter is digging this hole.
It's the relative of the guy. It's another woodchuck hole. They love to dig underneath decks and slabs, and it's about the right size and the same right amount of dirt for a woodchuck, and he's taking up residency underneath there.
He's filled it with things, then he just moves and makes a new hole. So.
Yeah. If you pack it up, you have to pack it with road gravel, and you should do it during the day when they're out of there, or you can set up a box trap, a live trap, but then you can't move them very far, and they may come back as well. But, you know, they're not a bad neighbor.
All right. So this is a Fremont. You've got a picture here. What would have made this hole in Fremont?
Okay, this one looks like a rabbit form, where a cottontail will dig a form to put grass in there and have her young, which is happens constantly this time of year.
All right.
But I can't see any trails or any dirt, so it looks definitely like a rabbit form.
And one more for you, and this is a Lincoln viewer. And
Yeah.
this is 2 inches deep, 4 inches across, and 10 inches long, and the grass is just gone.
Well, the grass is gone because it looks like that dirt has been hit by heavy rains and has killed the grass off. It's hard to say. It could be a woodchuck if it's in a bank, but it doesn't look as big as a woodchuck, so it could be something like a rat or maybe a Franklin ground squirrel. But because the water got on it and made it drift in the grass, it's hard to tell exactly what it is.
All right, thank you, Dennis. 2 pictures on your first one, Elizabeth. This is a Garland, Nebraska viewer. She wonders what this is.
So that was bird planted. It's one of the invasive honeysuckles, Lonicera maacii. It has berries on it that the birds just love, and they drop it down. So it's going to be one that you're going to want to control and take care of. We don't want it to get too big.
All right, 2 pictures on the next one. The shrub, she says, is about 12 feet tall by 6. What's this one?
This also is one of my least favorite shrubs. This is the European buckthorn. Really glossy leaves on it, and then it's going to have little black berries on it. When the berries are ripe, again, the birds come and eat it, and so you can move it and spread it that way through the seeds. So it's, again, going to be one that you're going to want to control, so that way it doesn't, start to take over.
All right, and 2 pictures on the next one. This is Paxton, Nebraska. This is a 30-year-old cutleaf birch. Has a crack in the trunk, but how awesome.
Yes, so to have a species like that, of that quality, was really shocking because, you don't think about having them that far west. So in terms of the crack on the trunk, we want to make sure that we leave it open to the environment. We don't want to put paints or tars or anything along those lines on it. There's not a lot we can do other than just watch it. Watch to see if that crack gets bigger, longer, wider. If you can see sunlight through it, then that's a big indication you need to take the tree out. Just watch the tree for signs that it's starting to become stressed. So leaves smaller than normal. Maybe on the side with the crack, you might notice dropping leaves earlier than normal. Just watch for those signs of stress in that tree and just enjoy it for as long as it's there.
Excellent. Thank
Elizabeth,
you.
so, I mean, they had grass right up to the base. Would you suggest mulching in and around that?
That would probably be a good idea. Just no more than the 2 to 3 inches of mulch around that.
All right, excellent. Well, before we go to break, let's hear from Gannon Rush of UNL's High Plains Regional Climate Center with this week's weather outlook.
Thanks, Kim. Things could be a tad bit warm on Friday across the state, with some places even reaching the 90s. After that, temperatures will linger in the upper 70s into the low 80s through Monday, and then there's a slight chance of a cool-off on Tuesday. An active pattern returns on Sunday, with much of the state expected to receive at least a ½ inch of precipitation. Some of these storms next week could be strong to severe, and there could be localized amounts that are higher. As of right now, the heaviest precipitation expected in the northeastern part of the state around Norfolk. Soil temperatures are for the most part in the 60s, but a few places do remain in the 50s. Warmer temperatures this weekend will help push these final places into the 60s. And that's your weekly weather forecast. Back to you, Kim.
Now, of course, it is time for the lightning round. Elizabeth, ready?
Sure.
This is a Broken Bow viewer who wants to know, is it possible to reduce the fruit production on black walnut?
Yes, but not very easily.
All right. Is there a downside to adjacent plants if you use landscape fabric under mulch in the paths along a garden?
Yeah, we don't like recommending using that landscape fabric underneath the mulch because it's too slick.
All right. Is all this rainfall harmful for newly planted evergreens?
If they're in a low spot, it can be. As long as they have good drainage, it should be fine.
All right. Is it time to prune azaleas and lilacs? This is a York viewer.
So we want to do it immediately after flowering. So I know some of my lilacs are still going, but yep, as soon as they're done flowering.
All right. Why don't we recommend cypress mulch?
So many reasons, but the short answer is it's not as sustainable as some of the other ones that are out there.
All right. How can I get my peonies to last until Memorial Day?
Good luck. You could cut them and dip them in wax and hold them in the refrigerator, but if you want to keep them on the plant, good luck.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. Dennis, are you ready?
Yep.
All right, your first one comes to us from Elgin. She has robins eating the small green cherries. What can she do to get the robins away from her cherries?
You can put bird netting over them. Robins are usually carnivores after worms, so I'm not sure why they're after cherries. Maybe there's a worm in them.
All right. This is a viewer who wants to know whether voles and mice can be trapped and then used for bait.
Bait for what?
He didn't say.
I can't tell you.
All right. We have a viewer who has a 4-foot fence. Is that enough to keep deer out of a garden?
4 foot? No. You need 8 to 9.
Okay. What animal will poop in the same spot like a latrine?
Rabbits, skunks, and cats.
Okay.
And also raccoons.
All right. There is a viewer who has field mice that are eating her safflower seeds that she puts out for the birds. Will they be a problem in the garden? This is from Bellevue.
Probably not. The mice would just going after, they're granivores. They're just going after the seed.
All right, nice job. Okay, ready?
Sure.
Rock. Your first one is an Underwood, Iowa viewer. He's wondering, is there a long-term solution to permanently get rid of clover? He's been using Speed Zone as per our recommendation, but he doesn't want to have to do it every year.
They're going to have to do it every year for a while and do it in the fall. The spring applications just irritate it, and then it grows faster in the winter, in the summertime. So fall treatments.
All right. We have a Fremont viewer who wants to know, is it too late to overseed with tall fescue?
Probably, based on the long-range projection that we just heard, you've got a window here of probably another week and a half.
All right. This is an Eastern Nebraska viewer who wants to know when they can seed buffalo grass.
Actually, anytime in the next month would be perfect.
Okay. We have an Exeter viewer who wants to know when to apply a pre-emerge for dandelions and crabgrass.
Crabgrass is, you better get it down now, and some of it's already germinated. Dandelions aren't really very effectively controlled with a pre-emergent herbicide.
Okay. The lawn companies recommend a 6-step program that puts NPK down in the summer. Is this good or not?
So the lawn care companies, I got to be careful here because they are looking for that premium lawn, and they have a one-size-fits-all mentality. If they're a large company with lots of clients, if you aren't happy with you want to go to like a 4 or even a 2, then find a lawn care company that'll adapt to your strategy rather than the one that is just their canned program. I'm not saying that 6 is bad, because summer applications of fertilizer are fine, but that's when you're looking at that lawn that you want to look like, the country club lawn, right?
Perfect. All right. That was not lightning, but that was good. And Elizabeth wins the prize.
Well, no. Don't you have to do
Oh,
Kyle?
I still have Kyle.
Kyle, just pass that down. Yeah.
I forgot. I saw the 6 up there. All right, Kyle, let's see if you can do 7. We have, your first one is butterflies. There were a bunch of them a couple of weeks ago. Now there are none. What's the deal?
I'd have to know what, but it could just be moving on to, there's no more flower resources that were maybe there, and so they've just moved on to other areas.
All right. This is a Denton viewer who has chiggers everywhere, wonders if diatomaceous earth will work to get them done for.
I don't think so.
All right. We have a Humphrey viewer who wonders, is it okay to spray now for worms in apples?
Pass.
All right. We have an Omaha viewer who wonders why there are so many grubs in the garden this year and what they can do about it.
Well, grubs in the garden, so usually those are something I would associate more with turf. So I'm not sure exactly what they have going on in their garden, but yeah, probably not anything you need to worry about too much because they generally are going to feed on grass roots.
All right. We're seeing commercial signs to spray yards for ticks and mosquitoes. Does this work?
I would not recommend it.
Cool. All right. It's still Elizabeth's.
Yep.
So sorry, viewers, I totally lost track. That was so much fun. All right, Elizabeth, what are the plants of the week?
So we have 3 really nice plants of the week that are looking great right now. We'll start with the white one. The white one, what it is it is a Korean spirea. This is a little different than some of the other spireas that are blooming. It blooms right in between the early Van Hoot spirea and then the later summer flowering spireas. The cool part about this spirea is the foliage. Just some big, bold, beautiful foliage on there. The flowers are very nice. It's on a really small shrub, 3 to 4 feet. The cool part about this one is it also has orange fall color, so it does really well in those sunny locations. The other one is going to be our lovely trumpet-shaped flowers here. This is a small vine-type honeysuckle. This is Major Wheeler. This is one of the smaller vining type. Now, we had a honeysuckle on earlier that was invasive. This one is not invasive. So, with those shaped flowers, we're gonna also attract some of those hummingbirds to those locations, about 5 to 6 foot tall vine type, not having to worry about seeds or seedlings with that one. And then the tall, blue, purple, depending on how you describe it, flower is going to be that Walker's Low catmint. Now, Walker's Low is still 24 to 36 inches, but this is a really great, hardy plant that really likes those drier soils. So it's going to be one of those that you can put in those infernal strips where it's going to be really hot. There's lots of different cultivars out there. Lots of smaller ones that would fit in any landscape. So be on the lookout for different types of catmint that might work in your landscape.
All right, excellent, Elizabeth, thanks. We've been getting a good amount of rainfall in this part of the state. Things are starting to come together very quickly out at our garden. Let's take a minute to hear an update from Terry in the Backyard Farmer Garden.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, still more rain here in Lincoln. Not sad about that at all. We are still kind of in a little bit of a drought situation in this kind of southeastern part of the state. So the more rain we get, the better off we will be for the rest of the season. So a little bit of soil work over the week. We have all of our oats cut back. We've started kind of pulling out some of those bigger root masses, turning the soil over, getting our beds prepared to start planting our annual plants. We've actually saved all of the cuttings of our oats and we're going to use that as our ground cover for part of our garden. So actually good 2-for-2 thing. So the garden is slowly coming together. Again, all the moisture we can get is a benefit. So we're still admiring a lot of the spring flowers. As you can see, we can see lots of color starting across the garden. So a little slow start, but going to assume most of you are all having a slow start too. So take your time, enjoy the wet weather, and stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden and check it out.
Nice and fluffy, and that garden should be ready to get planted any day now. And now, of course, it is time for us to do additional questions. So let's see. Your very first one, Kyle, is this is mystery stuff on a silver maple, and she also had it on a spiny rose gall, so, or on a rose. So what are these things?
Yeah, I can't see this one very well. Maybe like a spindle gall. The other one is a mossy rose gall. I think they look pretty cool. So they're harmless overall to the plant. Like on the rose, if you want to prune it out, you can get rid of them like that, but they don't harm anything.
And on the maple, they just are.
Yeah.
All right. You have one picture on the next one. This comes to us from Omaha. How can she stop these bugs from eating her strawberries? The plants are mulched with straw. They're in the 3rd season. She says they look a little bit like a roly-poly.
They are roly-polies. So yeah, like any fruit that's in contact with the ground can be susceptible to them. They feed on generally decaying plant matter. But you know, what I would maybe suggest, if possible, is removing that mulch, trying to let that dry out a little bit more so it doesn't have the favorable habitat for these pill bugs to help control them.
All right. This is a Lincoln viewer for your next question. He says, what is this? It's the 3rd one he's found in his garden, and it's a lot larger than a grub.
Yeah, it's a cutworm. Probably it looks like a winter cutworm. You know, just basically kind of similar biology to all cutworms. So they'll feed around the base of the plant and can cut it. They'll feed on a whole lot of different things. If it's a problem in your garden, you can try treating with, you know, a broad range of insecticides, but otherwise, you know, if it's just isolated a few, you can leave them.
All right, and you have one final picture. This is a viewer who, here's a beautiful little hummingbird or sphinx moth. She thinks it's the same one that comes back every year. Is that possible?
Unfortunately, it's not the same one. They don't live that long, but it's a white-line sphinx. They migrate up to Nebraska every spring, so yeah, they're getting here about now.
All right, awesome. All right, Rock, you have one picture on this first one. This is Sarpy County. He's wondering, is there a selective herbicide that will kill alfalfa in the lawn?
Yeah, this may be alfalfa, but there's also some black medic in there, so you've got an annual and a perennial, but certainly any of the broadleaf herbicides, especially those that contain triclopyr, will do a good job on alfalfa in a lawn.
All right, 3 pictures on the next one. She sent these from South Bend. She has a lot of plants that she thinks is a burr clover growing in the lawn. They don't come every year, but this year there's lots of them. What do we think?
Well, this is also a mixture. There's some burr clover in there. Burr clover looks just like black medic, only it has purple striations on the stem. And so there are some of those stems, but there's a mixture of both black medic, and they're both medicagos and burr clover in there. That's why she gets the burrs later in the season. But the black medic is winning in those pictures right now.
And how does she get rid of them?
Was that one in the lawn?
Mm-hmm.
Any broadleaf herbicide does a pretty good job on either one of the clovers.
All right. This is a Bridgeport viewer. She has sent us, oops, whoa, we have Dennis's snake in there somehow or another. So I guess we're ready for Dennis with your pictures, because I'm out for you.
No, we have 4.
Yeah. So you have pictures 4 coming up later. All right. My mistake again. I'm not on my game. This is your snake.
Okay, it's the Kay's brown snake that's full grown. They give live birth. They eat slugs and pill bugs. So if you're in Omaha, which I think you are, the lady who had, or the person who had the strawberry with the pill bugs needs these snakes.
Oh, brother. And
then everything will go fine. Because they eat slug, they're completely harmless, that's full grown, they eat slugs and pill bugs.
All right, your next one comes to us from Western Otoe County, which is that second picture that we just switched over. So what was that second picture?
So there was 2 brown snakes.
Okay, so
they're from the same person. That's one brown snake, and the other one next to the water is same species.
All right, excellent. And now we have the other ones. So your third picture
right here. So it looks like I had to bring this one a little closer. It's a garter snake. It's a plains garter snake, but it's not one. It's 3. And it's a female in the middle, the bigger one, and 2 males on each side because they have hemipenes. And so you have a mating of 2 males and 1 female, which is usually what garter snakes do. because they mix their genes properly. Okay, next.
You have one picture here, and this is a viewer who found the pieces of this snake.
Yeah, might get hit by a lawnmower. This is a western fox snake, a big rodent eater, 100% harmless, carries no germs or viruses, but eats rodents, loves mice and voles, and so if it got killed, you're probably going to have problems with mice and voles, so look out now.
All right. Two more pictures, and this is really interesting. This pair of Canada geese and a pair of mallards landed on the roof. This is near Shadow Lake and Papillion. Do they land on roofs, and why?
Well, they're sunning themselves, and I thought this was cool. You see the two Canada geese on the roof and the male mallard on the lawn. There must be really a ducky family or a waterfowl family that they, you have all these waterfowl that like that house. I don't know what is. But what about it?
All right. Elizabeth, you have two pictures for your first one here. This is a spruce right next to the house, 5 feet tall, no single trunk. They want to move it. Is it a tree spade or is it balled and burlapped, and when?
So that's going to be fairly difficult to get a tree spade of optimal size in that area. Usually we say a foot for every inch of caliper, so you're going to need a tree spade that's fairly large, and I don't think you have room to do that. So you're probably going to have to hand dig, you're probably going to have to ball and burlap. Your best bet at this point in time is probably going to be fall. So you can water it, baby it until it gets close to freezing. The main thing to keep in mind is you're going to miss out on that root ball. So you're going to need to apply that supplemental irrigation to that tree to make sure that it has enough water.
All right, one picture on the next one. This comes to us from Lincoln, an albino/white oak. Is this possible, and can it survive?
It is possible. No, it won't survive because they need chlorophyll in order to make food, and without any chlorophyll, it'll maybe last a few days or a week if you're lucky.
All right, two pictures on the next one. This is a Lincoln viewer who planted 3 dwarf apples this spring, wonders if they'll blossom and produce fruit, and if so, should he let the fruit grow?
So more than likely they're not going to, if they flowered already, they're not going to produce quality fruit. So I wouldn't let the fruit stay on. I also would take the rope that you're using as that anchor off of the tree, because that rope can really rub into the trunk of the tree and remove that bark, but just let them grow.
All right, excellent. Well, choosing the right product for weed control is critical to solving the problem, but sometimes product labels can be confusing, especially when it comes to warm or cool season grasses. Here's Rock to help us figure out if we can use one product on both types of turf.
In Nebraska, we have the advantage of being able to grow both cool and warm season grasses. We often get the question, well, can I use the same herbicides on warm season grasses that I do on cool? But first, let's talk a little bit about the cool and warm season grasses. Cool season grasses, as their name implies, like Kentucky bluegrass and turf-type tall fescue, grow better in the fall and spring and slow down growth in the summer, whereas warm season grasses do exactly the opposite, and that would be zoysia grass, buffalo grass, and Bermuda grass, although we don't grow much Bermuda grass in the state of Nebraska. At the end of the day, though, the herbicides that you can use for the warm season grasses generally are very similar, if not identical, to the ones that you can use for the cool season grasses. So if you had a cool season lawn, you've been really happy with how it's been going, check the label. We always say check the label, but check the label, and I'm going to be surprised if it doesn't work as effectively in your warm season grasses as it does in your cool season grasses. There is one advantage to the warm season grasses in that at the end of the day, in the middle of the winter or when we have a nice warm day in the fall or spring and they're dormant, showing absolutely no green color, a topical application of glyphosate can do well over the top to get rid of those pesky perennial weeds that are hard to control.
We can't stress it enough to carefully read that label. It will tell you what kind of weeds you can control, the amount and timing of the application, as well as what kind of turf you can apply it on. Otherwise, you're going to get to start seeding again. All right, one pick on the first one. This comes to us from Lincoln. Why are the bees dying on the patio?
it looks like it's probably a carpenter bee. So like a few weeks ago, when they overwinter, some die in their galleries, and then the ones behind, as they're emerging, they have to push out the dead ones.
Okay, 2 pictures on the next one, Kyle. This is an interesting thing. This comes to us from Ainsworth. What he's demonstrating is what here?
How to control webworms. So yeah, you can just use a stick and kind of destroy their webbing and make them more susceptible to other natural enemies.
And what he's doing with the bags there, viewers, is there were no webworms, so he's using a plastic bag to demonstrate. We have one more picture for you, Kyle. This comes to us from Dwight. What is this beautiful thing on the foundation of the house?
It's a spring form of a Luna moth.
Yeah, so absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
All right, Rock, now you get your last 2 pictures. This first 2, this is Bridgeport. What type of weed or grass is this, and how do we eliminate it from bluegrass?
So this is quackgrass. There is no selective control, and a shout out to Elizabeth for zooming in on this because my eyes aren't good enough and showing the clasping oracles that are typical of quackgrass. But unfortunately, there's no selective control. Spot spray with Roundup and reseed.
All right, let's see. This is an Omaha viewer. Corn that isn't corn. Last year she thought they had volunteer corn in the city garden. They never got corn. This year they've got more spreading. The attached pictures, and I think we have one more pic maybe, are of the roots and then the shoots. What is this and how do they get rid of it?
Johnson grass. Those rhizomes are like as big around as your little finger, and there are very few grasses that we see in and around the garden that get that big. Once again, this is a perennial, tenacious, difficult, if not impossible, to control grass, and it's going to have to be hand dug, and then those rhizomes, when they regrow, hit them early and hard with a herbicide of some kind, usually glyphosate or something similar.
All right, Dennis, you have one picture here. This is Fremont. What critter left this big poop by the back door in Fremont?
Well, it's probably an opossum by the shape of it, and the size and the length.
All right, and just that's what he did.
Opossum, yep.
Okay, 2 pictures on the next one.
These are scratch marks by a squirrel, probably a tree squirrel.
Okay.
And they're just
yeah, this
around.
is a Bellevue viewer, and they're
Yeah,
just
that's just a squirrel just doing his thing.
All right, one
Fox squirrel.
one picture on the next
And there's
one.
the fox squirrel that left the scratches.
This comes to us from Shenandoah, Iowa. She's found it.
That's cool. So you have melanistic squirrels. Those are the black fox squirrels, and we have albino ones in Pennsylvania. And this happens to be one that just has an albino tail. He's probably real fancy with all the girl squirrels. I mean, you don't see that many blonde squirrels, so.
Or especially white-haired.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm squirrely and I'm white here.
Yes,
so.
you are.
We'll leave it at that.
All right, Elizabeth, you have 3 pictures on the next one. This comes to us from Gehring. It's a 7-year-old snow crab. Started showing some spotting, curling, some sections that are yellow. What do we think here?
It's kind of hard to tell. I would like to see the picture of where the trunk enters the ground. Sometimes we can have iron chlorosis that will follow a stem girdling root or root issue or planting depth issue. And so we need to see if there was a flare or not on there. But that would be one to follow up with another photo.
All right. Elkton, South Dakota. What are these?
It appears to be a crabapple. We're probably thinking spring snow because that's one of the older cultivars that's out there.